The scheme is called New Horizons and is a 4-month program organised by the Samaritan Foundation of the Anglican Diocese of Newcastle. 8 young unemployed people aged between 16 and 20 are involved, as well as 2 youth workers. The scheme's aim is to provide recreational, social and work experiences, including a 1-week snow skiing trip, 1 week canoeing Mile Lakes and a week of recreational activities at Barrington Tops. Charlestown MP Peter Morris presented a $44,000 federal government grant to the Right Reverend Richard Appleby to fund the program.
$44,000 to assist and develop a method of helping many thousands of young people get jobs is a very, very good investment. And anything we can do to help lift the confidence, the ability and the skills of our young people to get employment is well worth doing.
But how does going snow skiing and canoeing help a person get a job in the future?
Well, it isn't just snow skiing and by itself, that kind of thing. Rather, it's helped people lift their objectives, lift their motivation, lift their confidence, their esteem, all the sorts of things that people suffer from when they're down, when they haven't had opportunities. Some people are lucky enough to have more opportunities than others.
The 4-month scheme started on Monday and will continue until the end of October.
Come on.
According to Mr Walker, this is the best deal in Australia. But like all packages, there are restrictions. The loans are available from St George Building Society under its Premier Low Start Plan. To be eligible, you must earn under $31,000. 6 local builders have devised a package with no hidden costs, and you'll have 45 house designs to choose from. Mr Walker says Landcom has done its part by discounting land at its estates at Booragul, Medford, Maryland and Mount Hutton. He says the scheme was designed to help the ailing local building industry, but he says the new homeowners will also come out the winners.
And there's nowhere around that you can get a new home for $1,000 deposit and no more, and a fixed price on the home. Of course, you've got to have an income under $31,000 so you can get the Premier Low Start loan, but it's a very good deal indeed.
With just 156 blocks up for grabs, Landcom officials are expecting a rush when they open their doors at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Well, if you'd gone to Cessnock, then to Broken, we've all been there several times, then along and around the corner as it appeared from the chopper, you'd come to Milbrodale. God's country, really, or part of it. The land was made many moons ago, and the history of the place, as recorded by Aboriginal carvings that are in abundance, has been set aside, if only temporarily, by petrol burners called Offroaders. They race in 6 divisions, from under 1200cc to unlimited, to 4-wheel drives and to V-dubs. It's a bit dusty for some, but it's a sport that fires the thrill of speed and skill on open country. Fast speed through tree-studded mountain tracks. It's fun for big kids, and it pulled an audience today that swelled the population of the place 100-fold. The nights up in the mountains, they say, were cold, freezing to the city slickers, but today's action was hot as it can get from the best drivers and machinery in the state.
Dr Shepherd rose to public prominence during the row over Medicare. He emerged as a champion of the conservative medicos and an unabashed hawk basher.
I'm just anti-hawk, and Howard is the only alternative.
He makes no excuse for his hardline views.
I've seen what the Hawke government has done to my colleagues and my patients, and I would be wrong if I didn't stand up and say enough's enough.
Dr Shepherd believes many Australians are unmotivated and need to work harder. Pet hates include the public service, bureaucracy and the government's healthcare system.
Medicare is totally unjust. It's only supposed to be the insurance system, but it took away your and my liberty to insure ourselves for doctors' fees. The government took monopoly on it, and now people If they have a serious operation, they have to spend up to $1,000 or more of their own money to get that treatment. Now that's not health insurance, and it's certainly not the best, the fairest and the cheapest, which is what Bob Hawke said it was.
How about a tip? While he's hopeful next month's poll will put John Howard in the lodge, he says no political party will do very much for Newcastle and that it's up to Novocastrians to get the city back on its feet. He says what is needed is a government that will leave people alone to do just that.
Incidentally, my statements today are...
Dobell, centred on Wyong, was formed for the last federal election and its enrolment has grown nearly 8,000 since then to 69,460. It's considered a strong Labor area and Michael Lee proved that by taking the seat with a 10% margin. Dobell is a three-cornered contest, with the Australian Democrat candidate being 35-year-old Graham Ward. He's a maths teacher at the Lisarow High School, is married with a young son and lists his leisure interests as hang gliding and surfing. He sees the problem with big party politics as a lack of sensitivity for people.
I just felt totally unrepresented, I suppose. I'd been for years voting for Labor, and I was voting for Labor out of fear. I believed in most of the policies of Labor, most of them, but there was quite a few things I didn't agree with. But I just felt if I don't vote Labor, I have to vote the Liberals, who weren't anywhere near what I believed they should be or should do. It was about that time that the Democrats were formed and I started to realise there was a third party, an alternative. I could get somebody to say what I was trying to say, and they did.
Second on the Dobell ballot paper is the Liberal candidate Les Nunn. Mr Nunn, 39, is the proprietor of a bait and tackle shop on the Torres Strait. He's been a small businessman since leaving the army 10 years ago. Les Nunn completed 2 tours of Vietnam and has served in other overseas postings as well. Currently, he's the president of the Wyong Chamber of Commerce.
Well, Ray, there's 4 main groups that have suffered in Dobell. We've got the pensioner groups who've had shabby delays and cuts to their pensions. We have a lot of pensioners in this area. Veterans who've had their entitlements reduced, and war widows had their pharmaceutical benefits taken off them. These people are particularly angry. And then you've got the young families. The family people that have suffered greatly under Labor. We have this situation now, they have less disposable income, greater taxes, and of course this is the same with small business. So really these are the people that I think are going to elect me in Dobell. Families, small business, pensioners and veterans. And these are the people who have suffered most under the last 4.5 years of the Hawke-Keating government.
Sitting member, the ALP's Michael Lee, holds Dobell quite comfortably. He was the first member for Dobell elected in '84 and became the second youngest member of Parliament. Even now, he's only 30. Michael Lee is a former power station electrical engineer and lives at Toukley. In Parliament, he was an Electoral Reform Committee member and a member of the Select Committee on telephone tapping.
Well, Ray, I believe this government has provided Australia with firm, stable leadership, and the alternative which is being offered by the opposition is simply bickering, division and no leadership at all. And I believe that Australians are now reaping the rewards of a government which has been prepared to take some very tough decisions, in some cases decisions which haven't been popular. But I believe the majority of Australians will accept that by sticking together we can continue to make sure that these rewards are provided to ordinary Australians.
Well, it will be the people of Dobell you'll be asking to vote for you. What can you say to them, the particular constituents you have?
Well, Ray, while this is considered a reasonably safe Labor seat, I've tried to work very hard in the last 2.5 years as the local member, and in many cases we've assisted people who have had difficult problems, because this area does cover a large number of people who have low incomes and have many problems. And I'm very confident that the feedback I've been getting, not only in the last month but in the last 2.5 years, that I'll receive a substantial amount of support from local residents.
That's the contest in Dobell. Tomorrow night we go to the other end of our viewing area to examine the huge electorate of Gwydir,
which stretches from Muswellbrook to the Queensland border.
Organised by the Hunter Farming and Business Action Committee, the political forum put key election issues and local politicians under the spotlight. Derek McCabe from the Democrats, John Turner representing the Nationals, and Liberal candidate Graham Dunkley outlined their party's policies, particularly in the area of small business and farming. Missing from the panel was ALP candidate Eric Fitzgibbon, unavailable because of a previous commitment in Cessnock with Minister for Resources and Energy Gareth Evans. Firing questions from the official panel was Executive Director of the National Farmers Federation, Andrew Robb, and President of Newcastle's Australian Small Business Association, Scott Derwin. Coordinator of the forum, Meredith Lang, says the event achieved its aim of making local politicians answerable to the voters of the Hunter electorate.
Yes, it has been a success from the point of view that the whole purpose of our committee's formation was to keep the focus on the key issues, or the issues we consider are major to this particular election. All the parties that have spoken tonight clearly recognise there are major problems with the economic management of this country which need to be addressed. I don't think any of them in particular have come out with any clear policies or clear commitments at present which are going to change the face of the government as we see it.
Today's gathering at the Newcastle Regional Museum was twofold. Lord Mayor John McNaughton, along with local parliamentarians Alan Morris and Arthur Wade, were given a tour of the former Castlemaine brewery, inspecting stage one of the multi-million-dollar bicentennial project. The Regional Museum had applied to the Commonwealth Government under the Steel Regions Assistance Program for $2.4 million in funding. Only half this amount was granted, and today Mr Morris and Mr Wade handed the cheque for $1.2 million to the Lord Mayor. At this stage, only $3.3 million in funding has been secured, including the $1 million bicentennial grant. That leaves a shortfall of $1.3 million, but Council is confident of raising that amount.
The Commonwealth hasn't let us down yet, and Alan Morris got this money. You've got to give credit where it's due. He got this money himself by a great deal of perseverance, and I've got confidence in the federal government, and we're subject to the election next month, or later on this month. I'm confident we'll have a Labor government in Canberra, and I'm also confident we'll get the money.
$1 million to finish the museum
Mr Morris
from the
was
Steel
making no
Regions Assistance Plan.
commitments
How likely is it that they will
pick
get
up
it?
the tab?
I said the answer from the Prime Minister in writing earlier this year was that in the context of the next budget that will be considered. Certainly myself and the other members of the region would like to see that extra money being available. But elections are notorious for lots of promises, and I'm not making any promises on that.
With only phase one of the 7-stage development near completion, the next 6 months will be hectic to meet the schedule. But it's been assured in time for the bicentennial that the doors to the Regional Museum will open next January. Today's ceremony came complete with a police guard of honour for the visiting minister and assistant commissioner. Senior officers from all stations throughout the district, as well as local politicians and citizens, took part. After the minister inspected the guard with Station Officer Sergeant Delforce and Assistant Commissioner Nixon, Mr Paciullo unveiled the commemorative plaque marking the expansion. Since its original opening in 1936, the growth in operations at Mayfield has called for more room. The $400,000 refurbishment includes the purchase and renovation of the old Mayfield Post Office. Most of the attention, however, was on the Minister's introduction of regionalisation, a scheme designed to reform existing management within the ranks, freeing more police to go out into the communities. But the new initiative has caused concern among some police. And today, the Northern Regional Commander met officers in Raymond Terrace to quell any fears about regionalisation, and says he plans to continue those talks.
I'll be here all this week. I'm looking at each major police station in the Hunter area, with the exception of Muswellbrook, which is just a bit far away, in the next day and a half, to talk with the police and to talk with the people who are doing the job, so that I'm aware of their feelings and what problems they've got with policing out there today.
What we've really done is put out our officers and the command into the regions, whereas before it was in the city. So it can be of nothing but benefit to the country people especially, but to the people generally, because it does really mean that the police and the public will be much closer together, and there'll be much greater knowledge as well, can I make this point very clearly, of the criminal element, because we are now specialising in regions.
Bit about it. The outcome for the permanent residents is good now, but we're still worried about how these other people can be treated now. That's why we all approach the Trades Hall and see what their reaction to.
When the regional museum is complete, a sizable proportion of its space will be devoted to engineering, its history and the importance it's played to the development of the Hunter. So it was significant David Skillington, the president of the Institution of Engineers, spent this morning inspecting the progress of work at the site.
I think it's a good thing for engineering. Engineering will play quite a large part in this museum, and it links engineering to society and the Hunter, and it shows the linkages which the community need to see and be aware of, and this will do it for them.
While in Newcastle, Mr Skillington also inspected work on the Tangara project at Ginninan, and he says Australian manufacturing could have a bright future if companies actively market their products.
They've got a great advantage now in the low value of the dollar, so we can no longer say that we can't compete because our wages are too high. We can and we should, and it's a matter of getting out there, using the engineering, the intellectual effort, find markets, develop processes, develop products, design products that'll be marketable. That's what Australia needs at the moment. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Talks began today between Coal and Allied and union officials. Discussions planned for next week include conferences with delegates from individual mines. The company would not put a figure on possible job cuts, but the Miners' Federation says up to 700 workers could be retrenched. Mr Thompson said it's vital that Coal and Allied drastically rationalises its operations to survive in the hostile world market.
We have to become more efficient. To have continued with along the lines for which we'd budgeted some time ago would be the way out of business. We've got to explore with the unions every means of becoming more productive and more efficient as a company.
Will that mean that jobs will be lost?
I would like to think not, but I believe it is almost inevitable that we can escape without some job losses in the course of refining our position.
What was the attitude of the union when you put that to them today?
I think, as I would be in their position, I was very concerned at the thought of losing jobs. But I think when they reflect on what was said today, that they will come to agree with us that the important thing is to keep the operations in position. We would like to avoid mine closures if we can, and the only way that we can do that is to keep refining our productive practices. Some of the old traditions that are specific to the Hunter Valley, restrictions that our competitors in Queensland don't suffer, should be reviewed and should go.
The Miners' Federation has reacted to the Coal and Allied move by asking the Joint Coal Board to intervene and by calling on the federal government to set up a marketing regulator. The Federation's Northern President, Jim Hayes, says the company's demands affect award matters, and reaction to those would be determined by members as a whole.
I've got a responsibility to talk to my people and tell them exactly the impact individually, what that means, and I don't want it to be seen that I'm portraying that without having face-to-face contact with my people, and that will occur on Monday.
Most of us consider this time of year as the time for open fires, big jumpers and cocoa, but about 250 swimmers today thought otherwise. They braved water as cold as 14 degrees to take part in the Northern District Winter Swimming Championships at the Newcastle Ocean Baths. Seaboard clubs from Fosterton and Carrington Central Coast took part. The events are not just for the young, but also for the young at heart. About 13 of the competitors vying to reach their best times were over 70 years of age. While spectators rugged up to keep out the cold, the icebreakers had only their determination to keep them warm, and some admitted that it wasn't easy.
Freezing.